Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into a question that's sparked countless books, documentaries, maybe even a few nightmares.
hmm
Why did the Vikings raid?
Right.
You've brought in a fascinating academic paper.
Yes.
My mother told me. A holistic history of the reasons behind Viking raids in the early medieval period.
Yeah.
And it goes way beyond the usual overpopulation and they liked shiny things explanations.
It really does challenge those assumptions, doesn't it? What's captivating about this paper is that it argues for understanding Viking raids as almost a spiritual endeavor intertwined with their worldview.
Okay, so not just grabbing loot and heading home,
Yeah.
this paper makes it sound like raiding was practically a religious experience for them.
In a way, yes.
Hmm.
To grasp why, we need to step back and understand the Norse worldview, particularly their religion. Imagine a society where dying bravely in battle wasn't just accepted, it was glorified, a one-way ticket to Valhalla.
Valhalla, right, where you feast with the gods having died a warrior's death. It wasn't just about dying, it was how you went out. This paper argues that's huge GE for understanding WHY Vikings set off on these raids. It's like they were seeking something beyond earthly treasures.
Exactly. It was about spiritual currency, a chance to prove yourself worthy of their gods, like Odin, the all-father god of wisdom, war, and death, or Thor, with his thunder and strength battling chaos itself. These weren't distant deities. Their stories were woven into the fabric of everyday life, shaping their values and choices.
So it's like having this epic backdrop of powerful gods influencing how you lived and how you died. But then on top of that, you've got the sagas, right? Those stories passed down, shaping Viking identity. The paper calls them out as proof that raiding wasn't just something they did, it was woven into who they believed themselves to be.
The sagas were practically cultural blueprints, showing young Vikings what a heroic life, a life worthy of the gods, looked like. And more often than not, that life involved a longboat and a good amount of fighting.
Can't forget the fighting.
Yeah.
Do you have any favorite examples of how these sagas glorified raiding? It feels like every other line is about some epic voyage or clash of swords.
Well, absolutely. Take Eagle Saga, for example. There's that line, "My mother told me someday I would buy galleys with good oars." This perfectly encapsulates the expectations placed upon young Vikings. Going Viking wasn't just a job, it was practically a rite of passage, a way to achieve the glory celebrated in those very sagas.
So it was like this feedback loop. The gods set the stage, the sagas glorified it, and suddenly every young Viking is itching to prove themselves in a raid.
Precisely. And this is where those traditional explanations for Viking raids like overpopulation or simple greed start to fall short. While those factors might have played a role, they don't capture the full picture. This paper argues we need to delve deeper into their yearning for glory, their ambition to prove their worth not just to other men, but to the gods themselves.
It's like saying, sure, they wanted treasure, but they were really after that divine reward in Valhalla. So if raiding was so central to their worldview, where did they actually go? I mean, it wasn't just a quick jaunt down the coast, right?
Oh, not at all. Yeah. And that's what makes this paper so fascinating. It breaks down the distinct phases and locations of these Viking voyages, showing how their motivations and their destinations evolved over time.
So let's chart a course through those voyages. Where did it all begin?
Well, before we set sail across the seas, let's drop anchor for a moment and consider this.
Okay.
The paper suggests that the Vikings' raiding routes can tell us just as much about their motivations as their religious beliefs. It's like each voyage was a chance for them to express different facets of their worldview.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So where does our journey begin?
Our first port of call takes us to the Baltic, a region that often gets overlooked when we think about those iconic Viking raids.
Right.
But this is where it all started,
Oh,
even
yeah.
before they set their sights on Western Europe.
So the Baltic was like their training ground, honing their skills before taking on bigger challenges.
Precisely. Think of places like Estonia, where we see some of the earliest evidence of Viking activity. These early raids were likely driven by a desire for loot resources and potentially even land. Those early Vikings were testing their sea legs, embracing that thirst for adventure that would come to define their age.
It's like they had this innate drive to push boundaries to see what lay beyond the horizon, but their ambition didn't stop and the Baltic did it. This paper mentions something about Vikings sailing all the way to Russia.
It's true. Imagine those Viking longships navigating down the rivers of Eastern Europe, eventually reaching the Volga trade route.
Wow.
This wasn't about raiding monasteries. This was about strategic alliances and economic opportunities, trading for silver dirhams and establishing a presence in those rich trading centers.
So it's like they had this incredible versatility, this ability to switch between fierce raider and savvy trader depending on the situation.
Exactly. It challenges this one-dimensional view of Vikings as solely focused on violence. They were adaptable, pragmatic, and always looking for ways to advance their interests, whether through force or through diplomacy.
But let's be honest, it's those daring raids that really capture the imagination. And when
Yeah.
most people think Vikings, they think of those iconic raids on the British Isles. What was it about those islands that made them such a prime target?
Well, from a practical standpoint, the British Isles were relatively close to Scandinavia, making them accessible for raiding parties. Plus, those early medieval monasteries filled with precious treasures and relatively undefended were tempting targets. But it went beyond simple practicality. The Vikings saw these raids as a way to test their mettle against powerful foes, to gain glory and renown, and to perhaps even strike a blow against a rival religion.
Ah, right, because the Vikings had their own gods, their own beliefs. They weren't exactly known for being, shall we say, enthusiastic about Christianity.
That's an understatement. These raids on religious centers like Lindisfarne weren't just about plunder. They were symbolic victories, a clash of worldviews. And they sent shockwaves through Europe, cementing the image of Vikings as a force to be reckoned with.
Lindisfarne in 793 CE, that's the one everyone remembers, right? It's like the textbook example of a Viking raid. But they didn't just raid England, did they? This paper also mentions Ireland as a key location.
Ireland played a pivotal role in the Viking Age, becoming both a target and a home for these seafaring warriors. They established settlements in key locations like Dublin, Cork, and Waterford, which soon became thriving centers of trade and cultural exchange.
So it's like they had this pattern of raiding, then settling, then integrating into the existing power structures.
Precisely. They were adaptable and opportunistic, able to shift from raiders to rulers, from warriors to traders. They intermarried with the local population, their cultures blended, and their influence on Ireland from its language to its genetics is still felt today.
Okay, so we've got the Baltic, Russia, England, Ireland. It's like they were everywhere. But there's one more crucial location we haven't mentioned yet: France. And I have to admit, the story of the Vikings in France is one of my favorites. It's got it all: epic battles, political intrigue, and a surprising amount of cultural exchange.
Oh, yes. The Vikings in France, a story for the ages. It's a testament to their ambition, their adaptability, and their ability to leave a lasting mark on the world. But to truly understand their impact on France, we need to delve deeper into their social structures, their family dynamics, those intricate details that shape their motivations and their choices.
Okay, I'm ready for a deep dive into Viking society. What made them tick? What were their families like? Did everyone dream of being a raider, or were there other paths to success and glory? Okay, so before, we were talking about the Vikings' incredible knack for adapting, for going from raiders to rulers, leaving their mark from the Baltic all the way to France. It's
Yeah.
like this epic saga of exploration, conquest, and integration, all fueled by this unique blend of ambition and pragmatism.
Precisely. And that's what makes studying their impact so fascinating.
Right.
We can't just look at the initial raids.
Right.
We have to follow those threads through history
Hmm.
to see how they settled, interacted, and ultimately reshaped the societies they encountered.
It really throws a wrench into that image of Vikings as just these agents of chaos, doesn't it?
It does.
It seems like they were just as capable of building and integrating as they were of, well, raiding and pillaging.
Absolutely. Take England, for example.
Hmm.
While those early Viking raids were undeniably devastating, they eventually led to the establishment of the Danelaw,
I see.
a region where Norse law and customs held sway. It wasn't just about conquest. It was about establishing a foothold, blending their culture with the Anglo-Saxon tradition.
Right. And we see a similar pattern in Ireland. Those
Yeah.
Viking settlements in Dublin, Cork, Waterford, they didn't just disappear. They became these vibrant centers of trade, cultural exchange, even intermarriage. It's like they raided a place that, you know what, this is kind of nice, and decided to stick around.
Exactly. It speaks to their pragmatism.
Yeah.
If they saw an opportunity to settle, to trade, to enrich themselves through more peaceful means, they were more than willing to take it. And in doing so, they left behind a legacy that's woven into the fabric of these cultures, from language and law to art and genetics.
It's incredible how these threads of history intertwine. Even something as seemingly destructive as a Viking raid could spark these long-lasting cultural shifts.
Precisely. And those cultural shifts weren't always peaceful or harmonious, of course,
Right.
but they were undeniably transformative. Look at the Norman conquest of England in 1066. That was a watershed moment, and it wouldn't have happened without those Viking raids centuries earlier.
Right. The Normans descended from those Viking settlers in France. They brought with them this unique blend of Norse military prowess and French sophistication. They essentially hit the reset button on the English monarchy, leaving a lasting impact on everything from the language we speak to the legal system we use today.
Exactly. It's a testament to the enduring legacy of those early Viking raids, however unintended those long-term consequences might have been. They set in motion a chain of events that reverberated through history, shaping the political and cultural landscape of Europe.
So it seems like the legacy of the Vikings, much like the Vikings themselves, is a lot more complex than just the smash and grab image we often have.
Mhm.
What are some other contributions they made that we might not immediately associate with these fearsome raiders?
Well, their shipbuilding technology, for one.
Okay.
Their longships were marvels of engineering, capable of navigating rivers, seas, and even oceans. They weren't just warriors. They were explorers, traders. Their voyages, crisscrossing the globe, connecting Scandinavia to the Byzantine Empire to the Islamic world.
It's like they had this innate curiosity about the world, this drive to push the boundaries of what was known, to see what lay beyond the horizon. And they weren't just plundering those far off lands, they were trading, exchanging ideas, contributing to this vibrant web of intercultural exchange that defined that era.
And their artistry.
Oh,
Those intricate carvings, the knotwork, the animal motifs, they weren't just decoration. They were expressions of their beliefs, their mythology, their unique way of seeing the world. And those artistic traditions influenced the cultures they encountered, leaving their mark on everything from metalwork to illuminated manuscripts.
right. It's like this artistic dialogue was happening alongside those economic and political exchanges. They were absorbing influences, adapting, creating this vibrant blend of styles and motifs.
Exactly. And we can't forget their storytelling.
Right.
Those sagas, those poems passed down orally for generations. They weren't just entertainment. They were repositories of history, of mythology, of their values, their worldview. And those stories continue to captivate us today, offering a glimpse into the minds and hearts of these complex and fascinating people.
It's like they left behind these cultural time capsules, these windows into a world that's both familiar and utterly alien to our modern sensibilities. So, as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Vikings, their raids, and their enduring legacy, what's the key takeaway here? What should we as modern listeners keep in mind as we grapple with this complex and often contradictory history?
I think the most important thing to remember is that the Vikings were not a monolith.
Okay.
They were a complex society with a rich culture, a nuanced worldview, and a story that goes far beyond the stereotype of the bloodthirsty raider. Their raids, while undeniably brutal, were just one facet of a much larger story, a story of exploration, adaptation, cultural exchange, and ultimately a lasting impact on the world we live in today.
Beautifully said. So, to our listeners, as you delve deeper into the world of Vikings, remember to look beyond the stereotypes, to embrace the complexity, and to appreciate the enduring legacy of these fascinating seafarers. This deep dive may be over, but the journey of discovery continues. Till next time, keep exploring.